Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Block Chat. This week we have the 121st episode. And we have a topic that's very interesting because we have a guest with us. And she has been to a conference that has been receiving a lot of heat for the past few years when it comes to crypto. And um, and she has been there for the past 3 years, I believe, maybe 4 years. And the conference that I'm talking about is Token 2049 in Singapore. And it has been one of the biggest crypto events in the past few years. And Julia is here with us. Let me bring her on stage just a second here. Hey, Julia, how are you?
Hi, Dennis. I'm very well. How are you today?
Good, good. So I was just saying that we have you just freshly back from Token 2049 in Singapore. I think you've been there for a week or so. Um, how was it? How was this year?
It was big. It was, I think so I think it was my third token now, and it's just growing. There were, I think, over 25,000 people at Token. There were, I think, 850 side events. And Token itself, like a lot of people only came to Singapore to go to the side events. They didn't even attend the main conference. But my impression when I walked in, first of all, the line was like crazy, really, really long line. It was a little bit different organized than usually. And then I walked in and people were like ziplining and playing like tennis, and there was all kind of things going on. Like it wasn't, I was like, hang on, where am I? It was like an adventure park. So and then I just kept going, and just there were so many highlights. They also like what they served, catering wise, how they looked after everyone, and DJs in every corner, and really like entertainment left, right, and center. It's big. Like it's worth seeing it. I would say it's worth attending. I find it very different also from the vibe than all other conferences that I normally attend throughout the year. And we have been to many. We have been also to consensuses around the world. And but I think Token has like a very, very special vibe. And if Singapore is packed like that, then I can only imagine how big the next one in Dubai is going to be. So yes, I think the industry is moving a lot. And what I noticed this year is a lot of people came from traditional finance sector. That's where the shift is happening.
Okay, interesting. So you've been there. Is this the third year or is it the fourth year you've been going to Token 2049?
I think it's a third,
Is the third
but I
year.
might be already
So
four as well.
so if we circle back to 3 years ago, you know, um, how did the conference change from that time? Um, what's the biggest thing you notice or you would notice, comparing it to 3 years ago? Obviously, the market was in a different place. We were in a full bear market at the time, I guess. And now there's it's a different movement. But was it, uh, is it bigger now? Is there a difference in the people who come, who attend? Maybe the speakers, I don't know. What's your take?
Um, I would say we're definitely seeing a big shift more from the really DeFi space, and what really comes from crypto. The last year it was all about meme coins, so it was all about gaming and meme coins, and the year before I think was all about NFTs. And now we are suddenly in the era of stablecoins and RWA. So literally every second person is like talking about the stablecoin that we're working on right now. And then, suddenly there's all this RWA providers and left, right, and center. And the conversations are just about regulations and licenses, whether traditionally crypto was never about regulations and licenses. It was like the opposite. People did like, everything for freedom. And now we're doing everything for regulations and to be told what to do. So I think this is where the industry is changing a lot and where the mindset of the people probably shifted a lot. This global adoption, I think this is probably what comes with it. And now with governments promoting crypto and all of that. So we see the big shift. One of the speakers was Trump Jr., and then talking about their project, which is obviously like very much the opposite of our original beliefs from the Bitcoiners, I would say. So there were basically every big name in the industry was to find somewhere on the stage, but really that shift from that absolute DeFi setups to controllable money, I think this is a big one that I noticed this year.
You mentioned that you met a lot of people working on their own, or how do you call it, stablecoin, right? Their own. So how do they, because it's actually quite a monopolized space. I mean, you have Circle, you have Tether, and maybe there's one or two more that are kind of trailing behind quite a lot. But those two are the biggest two, right? And what's the business model or incentive behind launching a stablecoin in your view, based on the conversations you had with these people?
The questions were always the same. Like that was literally always the question. Like everyone after every conversation is like, okay, stablecoin, and then they're coming with like very complicated language and massive models, and you're like just thinking, okay, another stablecoin. So I don't want to talk it down or something, but how many stablecoins can our industry survive? That's the question that came up to us. Like with everyone I spoke, which we are not in the stablecoin industry. Like we are in RWA, we are in real world asset tokenization, not in stablecoin. So that's a different thing. So real world assets is like you tokenize a physical asset that is there, something real that is there, use the value of that and then back it up and directly connect it with that real world asset. But with a stablecoin, you need a lot of, I would say, funds, right, that are backing, a lot of liquidity that are backing the stablecoins. So, and how do these liquidity providers around the world actually, providing or making decisions which one is now going to receive that backing or that liquidity? So I'm not a stablecoin expert, so I cannot say too much. And it's also something personally I'm not that much into. To be honest, I use DAI, I use the USDC and USDT, and then you personally in Australia, we know the AUDD guys quite well. They're everywhere around and very engaged with everything. But that is, I think everyone has their own priorities in this space.
But I mean,
what is your thought on that?
I don't know. I mean, my thought is that how many stablecoins do you need? Does the industry need or the world needs, right? But in the end, then you might say, how many currencies does the world need, right? And local currencies give certain autonomy to governments, and I understand when they want to tokenize their own fiat currency, right? I understand that point, because they don't want a world where everything is USD denominated, even though stablecoins are going in that direction, to kind of even more so have international trade happen in USD. That's the reality that's happening with the stablecoin market, and certain regulations that certainly don't help, because they're not allowing the usage of unregulated stablecoins within certain countries or businesses that operate in certain countries. And then the additional enforcement comes when you add certain, local taxation that might say, yes, if it's qualified as a stablecoin or as an e-money, let's say in Europe, then it's not taxed as crypto. But if it's not, then it's taxed as crypto. So there's I think a lot of ways where regulation is trying to impose politics on stablecoin markets, and I think that's kind of that's good on one side, but on the other end, it's also kind of scary because it's kind of just making or diminishing the possibilities of new types of stablecoins to come to the market, because right now basically all politics or regulation that is just supporting one type of stablecoin, and that's really bad for I would say Web3 or for evolution of technology, because currently for instance, the only MiCA regulated stablecoin in Europe is Circle's USDC, right? And the regulation says, well, for every dollar token you issue, you need to have $1 backing it up to, I don't know, 60% or something like that. It needs to be deposited in European banks, and then it also imposes how much of the funds can go into treasuries and what kind of treasuries it can go to, etc., etc. But this already defines a stablecoin model. If you look at MakerDAOs, and now it's Sky Money, I believe, model, initially was basically collateralizing every dollar token with Ethereum. And I think that model is brilliant, but regulators have not said that this model is compliant. So, inherently, the AI is, forced out of MiCA regulated regions. And I think that's bad because it doesn't give you alternatives. It just monopolizes the market, right? So on one side, it's great to see all these different projects trying to issue stablecoins, but the question is, will they be able to enter certain markets and offer diversity, right? And I think we're trying to really TradFi stablecoins, while there's models of using various systems that remain on paper just as white papers in the end, in the past, that got blocked by regulators in the US by the SEC, in Europe by local regulators from BaFin to others, and now with MiCA is kind of saying, well, this is the box where you can put e-money in, and that's how you need to create a stablecoin, which doesn't make sense. And I still believe that in the future, there should be space for fully decentralized stablecoin systems, just like MakerDAOs. However, the regulators are pushing every business, including Blocksquare, to work with regulated stablecoins primarily. I think that's kind of the downside of this. But I think one of the topics that you mentioned was really, at the forefront in this year's Token 2049 was exactly regulation, right?
Yes. Yeah. So just come back to the stablecoin. Every stablecoin provider was like, we are the only ones regulated in this country. We are the only ones regulated in that country. So each country is regulating completely different. Then there was lots of people, obviously, from Dubai there, who were talking a lot about real estate tokenization or RWA tokenization and the licenses for that. And interesting was that there is a few countries around the world which really came up with regulatory models for real estate tokenization as well. But nobody even mentions that. Like the world, it's almost like right now, it's almost like the world is focused on Dubai and Dubai licenses and everything else is forgotten. That was kind of my vibe, my feeling. there were a lot of presenters who were saying, we were the first ones who tokenized racehorses, for example. And there's there's Travis from Blockchain New Zealand. He goes like, we have done that years ago. So things like it's not actually a world first, like, but because I think the environment and the vibe, everyone is like, it's very, very dominating at the moment, obviously in that part of the world. And often people don't do the research before they go out with new products. So I think there were big statements made, and often not with enough actually backing behind it. That's another thing I must say, because the world isn't sleeping. It's actually a lot of things are happening. A lot of things have been happening for a long time. Some are more successful than others, and different countries have also really good regulations. I met the guys from Thailand here, enough props. Prop base, and Thailand has amazing rules for real estate tokenization these days. Also 5-year crypto exemption, so you don't have to pay any capital gains tax here and stuff like that. Nobody even talked about it. Not a single mention about it.
Mhm. So there's opportunities in different parts of the world, but you're
Yes,
saying that there's a lot of focus on Dubai right now in the
and
UAE.
big, yeah.
I would say that a lot of people who either are or were in crypto moved. There was a lot of people migrating, moving to Dubai
Yeah.
in the last 5 years, I think. And I think that's but not just people that are in crypto. I would say people in general. A lot of people moved their business there because there's just new opportunities that are happening in Dubai that are maybe not elsewhere. And it's a place that's it's safe, it's clean, everything works. It's a great place to live in. I would
And it's a
say
great
that
network.
that it's a great and exactly, and now it's a great network, and obviously people that go there and then start building something from Dubai, they will advocate for Dubai. um, I see one thing, for instance, they've introduced tokenization of real estate title, right? And I think how Dubai has, I mean, how they did it is really top down, but without allowing democracy in the choices, right? A lot of times, when it comes to regulation in, I don't know, if you compare it to regulation in Europe, it's fairly decentralized, right? You have X amount of countries pulling the strings and deciding how things need to go, and they have their own interests. They have their own local regulation. They have this European-wide regulation that they need to follow, etc. But in the end, you get rule books that allow companies um, to operate within those rule books, right? So, you want to operate in the real estate tokenization business. This is what you will need, and this is what you need to do, and then you can scale from there. When you compare this to tokenization in Dubai, they have basically just appointed one marketplace or one company to be able to do it, and that's it, right? And they have limited who can buy these tokens now. It needs to be just residents from Dubai, etc. So it's not so open, and it doesn't allow new models to come. So except if they open it up later on. But I think it's an advancement, but it's a very small market. Dubai is not a big market. There's only a couple million people living in Dubai, and that's it. And nobody has ties attached to Dubai. There's, only 300,000 people are really, locals, and the rest is just immigrants who came there to work. And as long as there's prosperity, they will stay there. Then after that, they might move elsewhere. Um, so it's a kind of interesting market that might be volatile as a market, and when it has its ups and downs, I would say. It doesn't have its real estate track record as European markets have, for instance, or the US markets have, etc. So So I think there's it's a great playground. But in terms of when you look at regulation, and Blocksquare has been part of the European regulatory sandbox. Are notarized, where we presented basically to various regulators the notarized real estate tokenization framework. And it's something that can work perfectly fine within MiCA regulation, and it means you can really create, in a compliant way, tokens that are backed with a charge on the title of a real estate asset, and you can do that in Europe. And I think that's fascinating. And the same model can be utilized by various companies. It doesn't need to be just Blocksquare. It's just, when you prove a model works, then others can come in and do it in a similar way. So I believe that there's going to be a lot of focus, with the advances that we're doing in tokenizing real estate in Europe. And so I think there's not maybe sometimes enough focus or not focus, enough highlight on what other countries are doing. Like you mentioned Thailand. Nobody's talking about Thailand and how great it is to open up a crypto business in Thailand. You have some tax exemptions with it. It has the possibility to tokenize real estate in a compliant way and so forth. Nobody talks about Europe, or everybody talks about Europe as being this very strict, now you have this MiCA regulation that's going to kill everything. I think it's tough, but if you're able to move past it and work with it, then it also gives you a sort of a moat that others can't enter the market easily because they need to do step 1 to 3. So I think currently there's this to buy focus, but maybe that's that's not how it should be, and there should be more focus on other jurisdictions and what's happening there on bigger stages, like the stage of Token 2049.
But I think as well, one point I want to make here is that what I see in headlines is, okay, we just, for example, issued the new treasury bill or whatever, the new crypto regulation bill to the government to approve it. And now suddenly these kind of countries call themselves the leaders in crypto and the leaders in blockchain, and because they have that created that, right? But the problem is, if this new rules include so many hurdles for the companies to actually get started, because you first have to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to get the license. You have to take so much risk. You have to go and attract so many investors to actually even get started. Then it's all just built on wrappers, not actually, in our case, direct asset tokenization. It's built on security wrappers, this builds, So there's like basically just let's wrap up everything and new and the same old regulations, same as in the old world, but we're adding the word crypto, blockchain, RWA, and that is, now we are the leaders of the world. But at the same time, we are charging 50% on taxes. That doesn't add up. You cannot become a innovative crypto capital or blockchain capital if you still do not actually follow up with your taxes and accounting. The reason why businesses go to Dubai is simply because they have attractive tax rules, and in a lot of other countries. This is why these countries become the capitals. And as long as other countries still start calling themselves with, I just saw a headline this morning where I was thinking, yeah, no, I don't think so. It's never going to work if you don't change like the essentials of your offerings, because no startup can even afford to actually survive in that environment. If they want to target retail, so it's like targeting retail. This is where they start trying to make it really complicated. And that shouldn't be the purpose of DeFi and everything we have been working on since 2009, basically, right?
Exactly. But do you think like this change in audience, you see in Token 2049 is actually the change in audience in the industry overall? Does it kind of correlate? Because you mentioned there's much more TradFi people that came this year's Token 2049 as opposed to the one 3 years ago, you know. And I would say that, back in 2017, 16, and before, there was even less TradFi people involved. It was more about the tech. It was more about, creating programmable money, programmable value, um, creating the internet of value. That was this whole
Mhm.
promise, right? And now we're seeing more and more TradFi people bringing more and more regulators, or regulators are bringing more TradFi people because they are writing the rules for Web2 to utilize tokens.
Yeah, and also, the systems that are built for them are probably like have to be easier to use because they're for the mass market, like the industry is much bigger.
Mhm.
Then I think this is the reason why we are shifting into new things in Web3 as well, like these kind of smart wallets and on all these new tools to use to make it easier to operate in the DeFi and crypto space as well. But I think definitely a lot of money is flowing in from these institutions, of course. But the whole nature is shifting as well. The industry is shifting. Um, the competition is shifting. I personally believe what I think where we are heading is now everyone starts to talk about stablecoin RWA. Few of them were talking about asset-backed or RWA-backed stablecoins. So backing it with real estate and other assets. I think we're going to see more and more who are trying this probably, which is not so easy as many think because there's a lot of work involved, what you have to build in the back end, as we all know. But then I think next year, I wouldn't be surprised if next year the big topic will be borrowing and lending against RWA. So that there's going to be probably already a lot of platform providing this next year. That's my feeling.
So we're seeing more and more RWAs coming on chain, and then utility being brought to this RWAs through lending protocols. I think Aave launched a RWA focused lending protocol. I think it's called Aave Horizon. There's just an initial amount of assets that's currently available, but I think that's going to grow. Um, and I think there's more and more companies from really have been focusing more on crypto that are going more towards RWA.
Yes.
So I think that's very interesting. Um,
Also
what do you
exchanges. All
exchanges as
exchanges
well?
all exchanges we've been speaking with that said now they're getting ready. They're actually looking for good RWA projects and stuff like that. So that
Mhm.
was another shift. Like last year, when you would speak with any of the bigger exchanges, they would say, "Now we only do meme coins," and this year they are literally go into this new avenue. So that is an important shift. I think as well we can already see coming. And then another one as well is the openness of education on DeFi platforms to actually start teaching them what is real estate tokenization, how does that even work, what are real world assets, like what's this thing about it, because the people who are so much in the DeFi world, they don't even know that this is already a thing. So I think everyone, but at the same time, the real estate industry, for example, is so massive. So they're very interested to look into this and to onboard real estate people, for example, or like bring them into their platform. I think this is where everyone who's in their own little world is like thinking, let's get access to this massive user base out there, this who we can maybe get through the headlines and through the angles of real estate. That was another thing that I heard a lot through conversations I had with other platforms.
I think it's the I think one of the biggest challenges is always, how to get people from that are, not in Web3. They don't have any stablecoins or anything to own stablecoins. I think that's kind of the first thing that needs to be solved. And a lot of times it's bound to KYC processes. And so, there's always this barrier, before you can buy some $500 worth of stablecoins, you need to KYC. Um, and I think that's something that's really a game stopper for growth of Web3 adoption, because it's an additional step that people just don't want to do, because they're like, why can't I just send this money from my bank account and just buy something with a credit card? Why do I need to do all those steps additionally? It's so inconvenient, right? And then
Yeah.
you have ever-changing tax regulation in many countries. And then people are just hesitant of entering crypto because they don't know what they will be taxed on or how they will be taxed in the following year or in 2 years down the road. So there's this uncertainty of on-ramping and off-ramping that has been created around the world. And I think that's something that is then creating a big gap between the Web2 and the Web3 side. And we're all talking about convergence of the two merging into one, and not it's just going to be the internet, but that's not the case. It's not what's happening. It's the regulation that's creating this gap. And the regulation is great, but at the same time, over regulating things just doesn't make sense. Why can't I buy a TV for $5,000 without KYC, while I can't buy stablecoin for $100 without KYC? That's what I'm saying. It doesn't make sense,
Mhm.
And so imagine that before I can make any purchase online, I would need to KYC. Any purchase beyond, I don't know, $50. Do you think e-commerce would thrive? It would not. People would not buy online. They would rather go to a shop. And
But also imagine every platform on Spotify would need to have a AFSL license, for example, or a financial like a special license to acquire first before they can operate a website.
exactly. So I think it's this kind of situations that are making startups very, very tough for startups to thrive in this environment. And
Mm.
it's basically allowing larger institutional players to move faster because they already have certain licenses, or this is just, they have the manpower, they have the resources to obtain them. And then these institutions are basically imposing into Web3 their mentality, their thinking of how finance should be on blockchain rails. And then this kind of just gets innovation to go away, because all of a sudden nobody's talking about MakerDAO. It was the central bank
Mm.
of Web3. Come on. And now everybody's talking
Mm.
about Tether's model, which is holding dollars in a bank and treasuries. And how great that is, because you get a stable coin and they retain all the yield. I mean, to be, you know, it's it's you
Let's
know what I
not
mean?
let's not dive into the conversation what's backing fiat.
Well, yeah, somebody I mentioned a comment. Somebody did a great post about the difference of tokenized fiat versus traditional fiat is that you now have this programmable money that can interact with smart contract and system, and it's great. And then somebody made a funny comment behind it, but what about the intrinsic value? And it was it was a comment that's usually you can see a few years ago, still maybe still today, under posts about Bitcoin, for instance. What about intrinsic value? um Anyways, I think what we can do is, we've been talking about token 2049. Will you be going next year? I mean,
I hope so, 100%. I mean, I don't want to miss out on the show. I would be it would be actually interesting to see how many people from crypto are actually going next year, or if it
Yeah,
will be completely TradFi. That will be interesting to see,
it
because
depends
we
on
also don't know what's happening till next year,
it.
with market
It
shifts and
depends how
so on.
long the bull market lasts. I think TradFi
Yes.
people will just fly away as soon as the bubble bursts, and then it's gonna be us again. um,
But the government
I
support it all.
exactly. Um, well, I think we haven't touched upon any updates for our community, who has been, watching us, following what we're doing. There's a couple things on that are, I think, very important to mention. So this week, we've submitted the Oceanpoint contracts for phase 1 and 2 to Haken. So the official audit has now started. There's been a delay on this. We hoped that we would be doing this earlier, but we had another 2 smart contracts that we've put together. One is to introduce liquidity staking for Uniswap V4 pools, which is something new that will come to Oceanpoint. And it's something that we wanted to have together with Point Token, because that's where we'll be deploying that type of liquidity pool will be deployed on Uniswap V4, which is great because you can then provide liquidity for in a specific range, price range, and be rewarded for if you are providing liquidity in the right price range. And another smart contract is a totally redesigned BSPT offering contract that gives a lot of flexibility to marketplace operators. They can create different tranches, pre-sales, main sales. They can specify which stablecoins they want to use. They can create a series of tranches upfront. So they will be able to create, like, I don't know, at price 1 of this amount, and then at price 1.1 this amount, and so forth. So you're going to be able to kind of pre-program an offering to your liking, which is not the case currently. And we bundled all of this together for auditing in one package. And this is basically how we try to manage as well the cost in our treasury, the expenditure. As you know, smart contract audits, they tend to cost quite a lot. Um, and the and what we've also been pushing towards a final implementation is, as you know, account abstraction. So this should roll out very soon. There's going to be as well a minor change in how the secondary market works. I'm going to tell you more about it in a future episode. And I think those and there's, of course, one thing that Julia would really love to see, and got just a bit delayed due to account abstraction work, because they are related somehow. It's the ability to stake BSPT tokens directly from the marketplace. So you don't need to leave that environment. So more people will be able to have this option, and they won't need to, go to Oceanpoint's the app and find the right asset there and the right pool. They'll just be able to click and stake from their portfolio on the marketplace. So that's kind of on the product line, or on the product side, what has been going on. And everything's getting very close to being finalized and going live. So bear with us as we work on this. Julia, you had the marketing team at Blocksquare. Any updates there? I know that people always ask, what about marketing? What's going on there?
Yes, so we have, as always, we are running a couple of campaigns currently. So we have made partnerships recently with a few other platforms where we're doing community coordinated campaigns. So we're pushing on all fronts basically there. We have at the moment as well an ongoing referral campaign for our Discord channel to invite a new member and members and introduce them. We have actually a nice announcement coming up tomorrow. We're announced tomorrow about a new partnership with another global accelerator program for RWA. So we're always and we have a lot of new partnership announcements actually coming up from our conversations at Token2049, like from all kind of different variations, which we now work on and define and then start to as a marketing team to produce. And there's definitely lots in the pipeline now. I also wanted to mention one thing. One thing we didn't even touch base on in Singapore. We always also co-sponsored an event together with actually Polytrade. It was for the new Integra blockchain launch, a new real estate blockchain there. So we have had a really good partnership with Polytrade for a few years now. All our marketplace operator properties can always be listed on there as well. So that's one of those integration deals and partnership deals we have with this kind of overview marketplaces and other marketplaces and platforms, give more reach basically to our properties. And they are basically had their official Integra launch. So we supported that from our end as well. And I think that these guys are doing great things over there as well in Singapore.
Right. Well, Julia, I would like to really thank you for joining me in today's blog chat. I hope that was informative for everyone to hear about firsthand, what's happening in Singapore, what was happening in Singapore last week. That's why we also kind of didn't have the blog chat last week, but this week, so we would have Julia with us, updating us on everything that's been going on there. Julia, any last words before we close up today's session?
Yeah, it's keeps interesting. Looking forward to what's coming next, and let's keep pushing on all ends.
All right.
And fronts.
Thank you.